Hello everyone, welcome to Easy Economics. How is everyone doing? And how is the preparation coming along for paper 1? Well, the body language and the feedback is telling me that we all are going to rock it, we are going to knock it, and we are going to ace our paper 1 tomorrow. All right, as always, keep your prereqs intact, arrive at the exam venue 30 minutes prior to your paper, stay calm, stay focused, de-stress yourself, say a small prayer before your paper. We've been doing it. We've been reading it the entire year. We've been doing amples of practice. Have faith in Allah. Have faith in your abilities and begin with a small prayer. All right. Time management, again, would be the key for tomorrow's paper. Igcse, 30 MCQs, 45 minutes max at your disposal, which means 1.5 minutes max to be spent on each MCQ, not more than 2 minutes more, right? You find yourself stuck in any MCQ, finding any difficulties in solving any MCQ, leave that MCQ for that moment and return to that MCQ later after you've done all. Again, an advice which I give to all of my students is, since there's no negative marking for an incorrect answer, you can always go for an informed guess if you are unable to make any answers out of the options available. All right. Paper structure, 30 MCQs. 1 to 17 MCQs usually are from microeconomics. 17 to 30 onwards are from topics ranging to macroeconomics. Examiner favorite topics or topics that are recurrent, found in each paper, in each session. PPC, production possibility curve. They could ask you for a shift. They could ask you for a movement along the same curve. A shift could be outwards, a shift could be inwards. In this example, we've shifted the PPC outwards. Again, we know an outward shift is when there is an increase in the quality or the quantity of the economic resources of an economy of a country's nation, right? So PPC shifting outwards, you look at options B, C, and D. What does it say? B says a decrease in availability of raw material. C says increased wages. D says lower productivity. Had there been lower productivity or decrease in availability of resources, it would have not caused an outward shift. Increased wages, again, no. It has to be a better educated workforce, increase in the quality of the manpower that has caused the PPC to shift outwards. Be crystal clear in your concepts. Keep your definitions intact. Revise thoroughly so that at least in the microeconomics topics, you can reward yourself with easy peasy marks. All right. Don't make unnecessarily careless mistakes in these easy questions. Opportunity cost, again, a highly tested topic, examiner favorite. It could either be in a descriptive question form or it could be a graphical representation, like I have given you an example through this citation. You can see what is happening in the situation. Read the axis, the vertical axis and the horizontal axis of each graph carefully. Study what is happening in the situation and then answer wisely. What is happening in the situation? Vertical axis displays the hours of leisure. The horizontal axis shows the earnings. Now, what is happening? The individual is moving from X to Y. Now they're asking what would be the opportunity cost for this individual for moving from X to Y. Now, if he's moving from X to Y, what is he doing? He's foregoing 3 hours of leisure per day. He's foregoing 3 hours of leisure per day. For what? For an extra $10 earning. So that's exactly what the question is asking. The question is asking, what is the opportunity cost to the individual for this extra earnings from moving to X to Y? Yes, the extra earnings is what? In order to get hold of the extra earning, what is opportunity cost? The cost of the best alternative foregone due to a particular choice made, right? So what is the cost of the best alternative being foregone in this scenario? Exactly, the 3 hours per day of leisure being sacrificed. This has to be C. Factors of production, again, a highly tested topic. Either they could give you an example of a factor of production and would ask you to classify it under the appropriate heading, or they could ask you to produce a proper definition for that factor of production. In each case, be crystal clear about the concept of the factors of production and you'll be good to go. Now, in this scenario, they are saying that the factory is relying more on robots for its production process. So they're saying to which factor of production is this referring to? Is it an example of a capital? Is it an example of an enterprise, example of a labor, or example of a land? Yes, it has to be capital because we all know what was capital. Any human-made manufactured good used to produce other goods, right? So it has to be capital. Demand and supply, again, you see the questions, more than one question, 2 to 3 questions in each paper, right? So it could be regarding the calculation for PED or PES, it could be a shift, it could be a movement along the same demand and supply diagram. If it's a movement along the same demand and supply diagram, we all know that's because of the price of that good itself. If it has to be a shift, then you need to see whether it's a shift outward or whether it's a shift inward, it's a shift in the demand curve or it's a shift in the supply curve. Then what is the impact on the price? Or are they asking for an impact on the revenue? So you need to study each question carefully and answer accordingly. For instance, in this case, what is happening? There is the equilibrium price has risen from OP1 to OP2. And what is happening? The supply curve has shifted inwards towards the left. Now they are saying what could have caused this price to rise from OP1 to OP2. Now the price is rising. The price is rising, so the quantity supplied is falling. So they're saying what could be the reason? If it would have been a successful government subsidy to rice farmers, so the supply curve would have been shifting outwards. It cannot be the situation. If it would have been a successful advertising campaign for rice, so then the impact would have seen in the demand curve being shifted outwards, right? So it cannot be the case. If it could have been improved rice farming methods, so again the supply curve would have shifted outwards and it would not have gone inwards. So it has to be poor weather conditions that has caused the supply curve to shift inwards. So be crystal clear in which curve is shifting. It's a supply curve or a demand curve. And then look at the options available and then decide. Again, I've told you earlier, in each MCQ, there are going to be two options which can be easily eliminated. So you'll be left with the remaining two options. And then out of those two options, you've got to see which is the correct response, which is the correct answer to that particular MCQ. There must be a hint in the question which could make you arrive at the correct answer. Be careful, reread the question and stay calm. At times, students get really anxious and they get overwhelmed when they see a graphical representation or when they see a curve or a diagram. However, it's the opposite scenario. I've always told my students, whenever there's a graphical representation, it's easier than having a descriptive question. All right, market economy questions, questions related to mixed economy, characteristics, features, again, a very recurrent and a highly tested topic. For instance, in this case, what are they saying? They're saying which pair of economic institutions can be found in a market economy. Looking at the options, again, we know MNCs and a commercial bank, they're a salient feature of market economy. Functions of money, they could ask you to compare functions of money with characteristics of money. We all be crystal clear about what were the functions of money, what were the characteristics of money, the role of the central bank, the role of the commercial bank. We all know printing and minting of money and coins is again a role of a central bank. Determining the interest rates is a role of a central bank. Lender of the last resort, it all accounts points towards central bank and not to commercial bank. Types of cost, again, they could give you a graphical question, or they could even be in the form of a calculation question regarding variable cost, fixed cost, average variable cost, average fixed cost, total cost, specialization again, the merits of specialization. They could talk about minimum price, maximum price. They could give you a diagram and they could ask you what would be the effect of this government imposing minimum price, price floors, price ceilings. Remember, imposing minimum wages, impact, externalities, social costs. Again, a very highly tested topic, examiner favorite topic. Monopolies versus perfect competition. They could give you any attribute, any feature, and they would ask you, where would you associate it with? Is it an advantage of a monopoly, or if it is what is a drawback for perfect competition? Trade unions, again a highly tested topic. Macro topics. Under macro topics, taxes. Now either they could be in the form of indirect taxes, direct taxes, or progressive taxes, regressive taxes, proportional taxes. Keep your definitions intact, keep your concepts clear. For instance, in this case, what are they saying? Now they've given you examples of indirect tax and direct tax. They are asking you what is the total amount of revenue raised by way of indirect taxes. So if you know what is indirect tax, or if you know direct taxes, taxes imposed on corporate profits and incomes. So you can easily chop the direct taxes in this table, and then you can pick out the ones which are indirect taxes and you can add them up together. For instance, in this case, which will you pick up for indirect tax calculations? Yes, you'll pick air passenger duty. Yes, you'll pick import duty. Yes, you'll pick insurance policy tax, and you'll pick VAT. You'll add all these fours up and you will add up to $495 million. That's your answer. Company profits and income tax are an example of direct tax. Government policies questions, again, a highly recurrent topic. It could be supply side, a mix of them. Together, they could put together monetary policy, fiscal policy, expansionary monetary policy, contractionary monetary or fiscal policy. For instance, in this case, what are they saying? They are saying what is an expansionary monetary policy? We all know when it's an expansionary monetary policy, it has to be an increase in the money supply or a fall in the interest rates. Again, the first option is very first answer is telling you a decrease in the interest rate. Still, you know the answer. I would still suggest you to go through the remaining options in order to ensure that yes, you've marked the correct answer. All right. Human Development Index and Consumer Price Index, again, a very highly tested topic seen in recent years. Again, we all know HDI. It includes two more features, which includes life expectancy and birth and education, which would differentiate you. Right? Population, again, a highly recurrent topic. It could either be talking about birth rates or death rates. It could be either associating itself with life expectancy, talking about immigration, net immigration, right? The influx minus the outflow of people, right? People coming into your country, pouring into your country, going out of your country. That's net immigration, right? Now, what is this question saying? This question is giving you a table and they're asking you which country is most likely to be most developed. Now, they've given you population, they've given you GDP, they've given you life expectancy. Yes, you're going to look at life expectancy, but then what about GDP and population? Yes, you need to calculate GDP per capita, right? So what you'll do, you will divide GDP by the amount of population to arrive at GDP per capita, right? So what you will do in each case, you will divide GDP by the population. So in this case, what are you going to get? 800 divided by 100 is going to give you 8. 6,000 divided by 200 is going to give you 30. 600 divided by 300 is going to give you 2. 1,600 divided by 1,000 is going to give you 1.6. Now you've got GDP per capita and you've got life expectancy. Now you choose which option you're going to choose. The one which is going to give you the highest GDP per capita and the life expectancy, a combination of both, right? So now it has to be B. If you were looking at isolation only at life expectancy, then you would have been saying 63. However, once you've taken out GDP per capita, you know that it has to be B, right? Be crystal clear because you need to satisfy both parts of the equation. You need to satisfy both parts of the table, right? GDP or real GDP, again, we know real GDP is GDP that has been accounted for inflation. Now, what are they asking? They're asking what is GDP per head? Again, we know GDP per head has to be calculated by divided by the what? Total population. Yes. All right. Developed and developing economy, again, they could associate factors and they could ask you which could you be associate with the feature of a developed economy or developed country. Balance of payment and current account, again, a very highly recently, recurrently, they've been testing you. They could give you an example of any component that falls into those four components of the BOP, either in the trade in goods or the trade in services or a part of the primary income or a part of the secondary income. For instance, they could ask you remittances would fall under which category of BOP, and we all know that they would be falling under secondary income, right? So it could be in the form of this question. Inflation, deflation, disinflation, again, questions related to inflation are highly important. We all know, be crystal clear, what is inflation, what is deflation, what is disinflation. Deflation, we all know, is negative inflation, a sustained fall in the price of the goods and the services. Disinflation was what? A fall in the rate of inflation, right? And what is inflation? The rise in the general price level of goods and services, right? Then inflation, types of inflation, whether it's a demand pull inflation or it's a cost plus inflation. It's a rise in the general price level due to higher cost of production. So then it would be cost plus inflation. If it's a rise in the general price level caused by higher demand, then it would be demand pull inflation, right? Now they're saying who is made worse off during a period of deflation. Now, what was deflation? A period of negative inflation, a sustained fall in the price of goods and services. Now, who is worse off in this scenario? Yes, it has to be debtors. Why? Because they borrowed. Now inflation is persistently falling and they borrowed at a time where inflation was rising. So if they would have borrowed it now, they would have been better off, right? Economic growth, again, a highly tested topic. Unemployment, types of unemployment, frictional, structural. Exchange rates, again, examiner favorite topic. Now comes to the most important aspect, which I want to discuss with you all. Types of the questions. You see, you need to look at the keywords present in each question. What is the question demanding? What is the question hinting? For instance, if they are saying, what is the most likely result of an increase in interest rate? So in this scenario, they are asking you, what will be happen to interest rates? What is the most likely to happen? The probability most likely to happen because of increase in interest rates, right? So For instance, if the interest rate is increasing, so what is going to happen? Yes, consumer spending will fall. Why? Because when interest rates are rising, consumer saving is going to increase. So most likely means definitely something that is sure to happen. What is going to happen? Yes, there has to be an increase in consumer saving and a fall in consumer spending. It cannot be a rise in borrowing because interest rate is rising. So borrowing will be discouraged. Similarly, a fall in productivity has nothing to do with interest rates in this scenario. A rise in investment, a foreign direct investment would be coming in, but then the most likely direct impact would be a fall in consumer spending because the consumer saving would be encouraged, right? Again, now they're saying in this scenario, they're saying least likely. Now, what are they saying? The managers of a firm have to discuss the following topics. Which topic is the least likely to be directly affected by the government's influence on the firm? Now, the key word in this question is least likely to be directly affected by the government's influence on the firm. That means that, yes, the possible options would be having some impact on the firms, yet out of these options, one option is certainly to be having a direct impact, right, on the firm. Right? So they are saying it would have to have the least directly effect. The remaining three options would be having an impact, but there would be one option that would be having least direct impact. So what could be that option? Health and safety laws would be having, but indirect. Interest it pays on borrowed money. Minimum wages must pay to workers. Yes, they would all be affecting, but then what about replacing one of its managers? Yes, replacing one of its managers would be least likely to be directly affected by the government's influence on the firm. Why? Because it is an internal matter of the firm. So you see, the key word is there in the question. It's all for you to identify and mark the correct answer. Now, in this case, they are saying what is found in a competitive market. Yes, firms with limited capital can enter the market. So again, what is found in a competitive market? This means something which is naturally to be found in it. That has to be a part and parcel of competitive market. Read the keyword. The hint is there in the question. Keep your definitions, keep your basic concepts intact. They could calculation of price elastic demand, calculation of price elastic supply. Keep the formulas in your mind. Look at the cost diagrams. Know how to calculate GDP per head, like I did in the question earlier. You need to solve the graphs and the cost curves properly. That accounts for reading the cost curves and reading the diagrams, reading the graphical representations carefully. For instance, in this case, what are they saying? In this case, they've given you the four cost curves, and they're asking you which would be yielding the highest amount of fixed cost. Now, the options itself are there in the answers, right? Now, you look at D. What is happening in D when the output level was 0? They're showing 0 fixed cost, right? All of it is variable cost. In this case, this is the amount of fixed cost. In this case, this is the amount of fixed cost. And in this case, the curve is starting from here and gradually the total cost, average total cost is declining. So this means this total amount was fixed cost. Because we all know fixed cost remains constant in the short run, right? It remains fixed in the short run. It doesn't changes with the level of output. So it has to be A if you are talking about the highest level of fixed cost. You need to learn to read the graphs and the curves properly. Now, they could also give you a bar graph. Now, what are they saying in this question? What are they saying? They're saying the diagram shows percentage changes in house prices in an economically developed country. Now, it's a developed country. What is the vertical axis shows? Vertical axis is showing the percentage change in house prices. The horizontal axis is displaying the months. Now, if you look at the general trend, what is happening? There has been a rise in the price apart from the month of June. The trend is showing that the percentage in house prices is hinting you a rise. Now, they're saying what might have caused these changes in prices. Now, look at the options available. An increase in unemployment, an increase in the supply of houses, an increase in government subsidies. If the government would have been increasing the subsidies to the house builders, so because of the increase in the supply, the prices should have been falling. If there would have been an increase in unemployment, so the demand would have been falling, and the fall in the demand should have caused the price to fall, so it cannot be D. If there would have been an increase in the supply of houses, again, there would have been a fall in the prices, so it cannot be C. Yes, it has to be an increase in income. Why? Because a rise in income, a rise in purchasing power is causing the demand for those houses to rise, eventually resulting in an increase in the price of houses. So it has to be B in this scenario. Now, they could give you questions that includes tables. Now, either the they could give you the options at the end of the table, or they could give you the answers in the form of the table. For instance, if the options are available at the end, or the options are with itself are the answers. If in this case, what are they saying? So you need to satisfy both part of the table. They have given you statistics for US, Japan, and Sweden for year 1 and year 2. The first part of the table is displaying you unemployment. The second part is displaying you inflation. Now they're saying, what conclusion can you derive? The key to answer this question is just give a quick look at the table and read the options, and by way of looking at the options, answer the question. For instance, what is option D saying? Option D is saying unemployment and inflation moved in the same direction in Japan. Now you look at this option and now you look at Japan. Unemployment and inflation moved in the same direction. In year 1, unemployment was 2.7%. And in year 1, inflation was 1.7%. In year 2, unemployment is still the same. However, inflation has fallen. So it's not moving in the same direction. Why? Because unemployment was the same. So you'll chop D off. C says the number of unemployed people decreased in all 3 countries. Now number of unemployed people decrease. You cannot talk about the number of unemployed people. Why? Because it's giving you the unemployment percentage. They have not given you the statistics for the amount of population. So you cannot talk about the number of unemployed people. Similarly, B is giving you the same number of people were unemployed in Sweden and Japan. You do not have the amount of population of Sweden and Japan, so you cannot make this assumption that yes, the same number of people were unemployed in Sweden and Japan, right? You cannot make this amount of assumption, that because if they're giving you the percentages, you do not know the amount of population, so you cannot talk about the number of people being unemployed. So you can chop B and you can chop C. So by elimination, we have arrived at A, and by logic also we can say that yes, it's A. Why? Because they're saying in year 1, the cost of living rose in US. Yes, now you look at inflation statistics. In year 1, inflation was 5.6, in year 2 it was 3.4. Yes, we can say that inflation was higher in year 1, so it has to be A. See how it gets easier. So the key to answering questions of table is read the answers and then solve the question. Now, if they've given you the response and the response itself is the answer, now you read the answers. What are they saying? Countries in Europe were in a recession in 2012. World prices were expected to fall. However, the prices rose. Now, they are saying what could have caused this? Possible causes of the oil price to rise. Now, we all know what would have caused the price to rise. If there would have been a demand for alternative fuels would have increased, so the price would oil have fallen. So you can chop D off. If Saudi Arabia had increased its oil production, so the supply would have increased. So the price would not have the price would have fallen and not risen. So you can chop C off. D says Japan's economy had negative economic growth. If Japan's economy had negative economic growth, so the world prices would have fallen and not risen. So you can chop B off. So you see, you have chopped all of them off. Yes, China increases car production, the demand increase, which led to an increase in the price. And a possible cause of a fall could be that, yes, the industrial production in Europe was declining. That is why you can attribute it to that reason. So it has to be A. See how it gets easier. Pie chart, again, it can also be a type of a question that could be tested tomorrow. When it comes to pie chart, again, read the options. Study the pie chart and then read the options. Now, what is this scenario happening in this case? The first part of the pie chart is displaying you exports. The second part is displaying imports. Now, they're saying the total exports was 120 million. Now, exports of goods was 50%. That means $50 million was a part of exports, accounted for exports. Services, again, $50 million. If it was imports, 60% was attributed to imports. Total imports was 100 million. This means imports was out of how much? It was 60 million. $60 million. And services were how much? Again, $40 million. Now let's look at the options. The first option says there is a deficit in the balance of trade in goods. Now, balance of trade in goods, how will you calculate it? You will subtract the exports of goods minus the imports of goods. The exports of goods is how much? The exports of goods is how much? The exports of goods is this is 60 million, and this is also 60 million. Yes, because it's 120 million. So exports of goods is also 60 million, and the imports of goods is also 60 million. So 60 million out of a 60 million, the answer is 0. So it's not a deficit. Now they're saying there's a deficit in the balance of trade in services. Now the services export is 60 and the imports was 40, so it has to be a 20 million surplus. So it cannot be a deficit. You can chop C off. C says there's a surplus in the balance of trade and goods. We eventually arrived, it was a zero balance. So you can chop C off. D says there's a surplus in the balance of trade and services. Yes, because it's a 20 million surplus. So it has to be D. See how it gets easy. So this is how the types of the questions that are going to come tomorrow. We've been drilling it. We've been doing it. I'm definitely 100% sure that we are all going to ace it. Keep your concepts clear. Have faith in Allah. Keep your time check in hand. All my prayers are with all you all. Let's rock up paper one. Best of luck.